How often do you guys struggle with your guys' faith with God?
Dude, it's so funny. And sorry, I
Yeah.
only want to talk first because I've
Yeah,
been thinking
definitely.
about this when you asked.
Mm-hmm.
My thing that I came to the conclusion of is because, like, yeah, I question my faith a lot to answer that
Yeah.
question. Like, and the question that I ask myself, or the conflict that I have, is like not whether Christianity is the best religion, but am I best for this religion?
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I think
I
the
like
doubt
that.
doesn't come from God. The doubt comes from
Yourself.
myself thinking I'm good enough for this. But it's also, and all that to say, insecurity.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think as humans, we kind of encounter similar insecurities, even in relationships, going for promotions, going for a PR at the gym,
Mm.
where it's like, the weight's the weight, the goal's the goal, but are
Mm.
you good enough or strong enough at this point to achieve it?
Mm.
And that made me think about your question, because I was like, yeah, no, like Christianity, God's all powerful. I believe in God. But the doubt comes from myself not being good enough sometimes.
I see.
So, do you feel like, well, because I know there's no such thing as like a perfect person or a perfect
Yeah.
Christian in that
Yeah.
way. So, I do get where you're coming from though, because everybody wants to be that like perfect Christian,
Mhm.
perfect person. But for me, where I guess almost question, I do, to
Yeah.
answer your question too, I do question my faith. And recently I've been doing it a little bit more because I feel like I have a lot of things going right.
Mhm.
And that's one thing that I struggle with, is when things are going right, I kind of almost lose sight of my
Mhm.
faith. I know it's there, but I'm not pursuing it and trying to pursue and strengthen the relationship that I have with God. But I like almost like, I guess I almost like turn my head this way and I know He's here.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to break that habit because I'm going through it. It's something that I'm going through right now. And I'm trying to like break that habit. I don't know if it's a habit or I don't know what it is. So I'm trying to find it within myself and trying to figure it out. See, like lately I've been trying to, I know that there's certain things that I need to do. Like I need to read the Bible a lot more than I do already. So I'm like trying to find that time, and I know I can make time. It's just like I'm not doing it. So I'm trying to, I pray that, He can help me do it. But at the same time, what am I doing to do that? Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's just, I think at the end of the day, it just comes from me not making time.
Discipline.
And it's I think
Mhm.
that's what it is. It's a lack of discipline from me, and it's just like I don't know. It's something that I'm trying to figure out because right now,
I know exactly what
like
you
I
mean.
said, I'm trying to
Yeah.
find like a balance,
Yeah.
and with that comes work, the pod,
Mm.
hanging out with friends, God,
Yeah.
and God should be on the top, but of course, life is life, and it's just
yeah.
like I just need to find that balance.
Mhm.
So I think that's where my my doubt of faith kind of comes in, and it's something that I'm working on.
Mhm. Yeah, no, the reason I asked that is because I wouldn't say lately, like just recently, but a couple weeks ago, I messaged John. I forgot what the question was exactly, but it was a question about faith or a statement about faith or something like that. But it was mainly about like at times when I start to overthink, I start to question my own faith. And in that, it's like, yeah, but does God love me? Am I worth it for God? Like things like that. And then that brought me as like, no, this is normal. It's pretty normal to think that because it's like trying to understand how much God loves you as a person, and you think it's like that love's not possible. But with God, it is extremely possible because it's God. And it's just been even sometimes still to like just not just the other day like a story, but even still just like recently, even though I said it wasn't recently, but still there's at times I still catch myself. I still like overthink like when I do something, is that from God or is that from the devil? Because there's things that I think about and it's like when I question my faith, am I truly questioning my faith internally in my heart, or is that the devil just trying to play around with my head? Because as we've always said, the devil can't take things away from you, but he could, certainly like implant lies into your head, make you overthink, and kind of make you fall off path. So with that, there's been a couple times where I'm just overthinking things. I'm like, where is this coming from? You know, is this in my heart, or is this the devil trying to mess with me?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I also want to ask you guys that to see if I'm alone in that or anything else. You know.
No, I definitely think you're not alone, because sometimes I go through that too, but I think I've heard it on, maybe I always refer back to George Janko. George Janko kind of mentioned something similar, and he says when you're having those thoughts of like overthinking, pray on it first. Pray on it first and see where, I don't know if you just pray on it, and whatever you feel from that point on is, sorry, I can't remember where I was going.
No,
But
fine,
I think you tie it into where like God is going to lead you in the right direction as long as you pray on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I see. I guess.
Go for it. No, I want to.
No, I was just gonna like reinforce what you said, like walk by faith, not by sight.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's human nature, is that we're so used to seeing everything as in like it's real because it's in front of me, versus walk by faith, which is with God and having that relationship, not by sight. That's what I would say I struggle the most, is not walking by sight, but walking by faith, because I'm so accustomed, like, the reality of the truth is, if it's in front of me, it's real. But then I'm so challenged to accept the faith of walking blindly, but not blindly, but walk through faith. But yeah, what do you want to say?
Yeah, I mean, back to what Javi was saying. I'm gonna bounce back and forth because I want to.
Yeah, definitely.
Train of thought, but where you were coming from too, and I think like the discipline thing is relatable to a lot of people, because I mean, us gym goers, right? We understand the efforts and I guess the trials it takes to be great in the gym. But the amount of people that I hear too that are like, oh, I want to work out, I want to change the way I look, I want to change the way I feel, but they don't have enough time. And I'm just kind of curious how you think about that, because to me, I'm like, but you do. But, distractions happen.
People do.
Yeah, absolutely. Make the time for the things that you really want. And I guess one thing too, like that I've learned from, my grandpa is he's like, I will always do anything for the things I care about most. And I was like, oh man, that's cool. And something that's resonated with me. So that was just like food for thought. And I'm not trying to be condescending or anything, but I know that that's a relatable sensation for people who are like questioning God. Or their faith, like there's going to be moments where you are living a high, and it's going to feel like you're kind of distracted by the shiny coin. But the one thing that I always think about too is like, if that's a gift, if you receive that gift from God, then why wouldn't you include him or like thank him? And then as far as, your topic goes of doubting faith, what I think Javi said is absolutely valid. I think in moments when I'm in turmoil, the best thing that I can do, dude, is cut out all the distractions and just spend alone time with God, just praying and asking clarity questions. And I think the one thing that has helped me a lot is that just because I'm questioning God doesn't always mean the devil's at work, right? Because God gives you free will to make choices. Like he wants you to choose him in a relationship. And sometimes I would think like, oh, is this thought bad because, could this be the devil at work influencing this thought, or is this actually me? And then that sparks up a lot of insecurities of what I've been saying is like, am I good enough for God? And so I do have to remind myself that God's already chosen me, right? And the one thing that I need to acknowledge is like, I have the free will to choose, and I can either choose to live for God or choose not to. You know what I mean?
No, I like where you're going with that.
It's not a simple decision, but I know we've talked about this in the past too about relationships. Like, to die for someone is easy, to live for someone is hard, because every single day you have to choose that person. Like relationships are a choice every single day. And it's not, if it becomes an obligation, if it becomes religion, then you kind of lose that spark and relationships die. But you have to choose to like make things work no matter how hard they get, right? And that's why we have our wedding vows. But I see the same thing happen with my relationship with God too, is like, despite how hard and ugly or great things are, like I still have to choose him, because at the end of the day, when all that is gone, who am I left with?
Yeah. That's very true. I like that.
It's crazy because every time we have conversations, I feel like both of you guys are always saying things that I need to hear in the moment, which is kind of insane.
No, yeah, and this is why I like the podcast. This is why I look forward to it, because it's people who are on their own separate journeys in their own faith with God, but we all have similar experiences or questions that we can share that can grow from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And to anybody else who's listening too, they could grow from it too.
Yeah. And the way I look at it too, now that I have a kid, and maybe that's changed my perspective a lot and validated a lot of the things I feel. In that, like, if my son's ever going through a hard time, the thing I would want him to know is, like, you could always come to me, no matter how scary, no matter how deep in the hole you are. And for the good, like, I want to hear the good news in your life.
Yeah.
Like, if you get married one day, if you get that job that you've been wanting, if you graduate from the program that you want, whatever the case may be, like, I want to hear it all. And I think, like, that's how God would feel about us too. No matter how ugly something is, no matter how beautiful something is, like, he's there because he chooses to be. You know what I mean? And I'd hope that we have faith in him enough that we could choose to confide in him as well. Same way that I would just, like, I want my son to, you know?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful right there. And yeah, I mean, from that, just like from what I could share recently is also I've been struggling to read the Bible. I finished the Gospels, and I jumped into the Book of Acts. And I will say the Book of Acts is one of the hardest books I've gotten through, because it's a lot of history, going from like city to city to city to city. It's essentially like a vlog, but biblically, right? Just their adventures and stuff like that. And at one point, I'm like, this is a lot. This is a lot. And I even told my dad, I was like, Dad, like, the Book of Acts is kind of boring. Like, no offense to it, because, you know, I'm reading it as a book as well, but also for knowledge. And I'm reading it, I'm like, and one day I didn't read it because I was like, I don't want to read it. I don't. And then the next day I forced myself to have, not forced, but I had that discipline to read through it. And then sure enough, I come to a passage where like half the, like, I'm not going to go into detail, it's a little bit more personal, but half of the page was all highlighted. Because it was parts that were hitting that, things I needed to hear, like reassurance and things that were being answered. And it's like that thing where, like, if I just gave up on that book, or the Book of Acts, I never, you know, I skipped it, I would never obtain that knowledge from what I read from the Bible. Not even just knowledge, but that reassurance that I got from it. And that's just, it goes to show, like, when you're in life or whenever you're reading something, just because, you know, it's getting to that threshold where it's like, you're kind of, I'm going to give up. I'm just, you know, skip. I'm going to do whatever. But if you push past through those struggles, through those confusing moments, you'll eventually make it and you'll get something from it. And that's exactly what happened to me is I got something from it. I got my reassurance. I got my answers. And now I think I'm like the last 4 chapters of it right there. And I'm going to move on to the next one after that. But that's something that kind of had to do with all that too, just to give a little bit more context on that.
Yeah. Well, it just kind of reminds me of like your parents, right? Example of when your dad's trying to give you a life lesson when you're younger, but at that time in your life, it doesn't mean anything and goes in one ear and out the next. And the same thing happens with reading. Like, yeah, it might be boring now. It might not resonate with you now, but the fact that you highlighted it and maybe you come back later on in life when it does mean something, or that you're teaching it, or you get a revelation from it at a different point in your life. Like, that's going to be powerful in itself, because then you'll think about, the first time I read this didn't mean anything. But the second time that I encountered this scripture, I received a revelation with it. And I think I think we can all agree that we've probably all received advice from our parents at one point in time that was garbage at the time.
At the time, garbage.
But now that we're older, you know, I've had many revelations where I'm like, dang, my dad, I get what he meant.
And they'll even tell you, you don't understand now, but you'll understand later.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. And I'm like, getting to the age where I'm like, oh.
I was like, first, is there a spider on me? Like, what are you doing? And then I was like, okay, that's the verse.